Hi, I'm Chris. I'm from St Andrews. I'll be doing the reading about the cleansing of the temple and some of my thoughts. So let's open our Bibles to Mark 11:15 to 19. I'm reading from the ESV. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." And the chief priests and the scribes heard it and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him, because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. So let's look at the setting. The Gentile court, according to historians, was roughly 35 acres in area. It was a large area surrounding the temple that the Jews would frequent. It was teeming with market traders, declaring their wares to the masses with the first century equivalent of pound a bowl, maybe a shekel a sack. Money changers littered the site, providing an exchange service to aid payment of the temple tax. Half a shekel was required, according to Exodus 30, by everyone over the age of 20 that was listed on the census, regardless of social standing or wealth. Roughly 2 days' wages paid for the upkeep of the temple. The tax was stipulated in the Torah as the yearly atonement offering payable in the measure of the shekel of the sanctuary, 20 gerahs, or 11 to 12 grams in weight. A regular rhythm of temple life for Jews, and typically a rhythm that had been undoubtedly made more complex to adhere to the letter rather than the spirit of the law, most likely for personal gain. The money changers, probably at the behest of the priests, would provide an airport exchange price for exchanging currency, wringing out as much profit as possible from faithful attendees. First century Jerusalem would have had all sorts of coins floating around. They had relative value and worth dependent on their weight and material. Roman denarii, Tyrian shekels, the didrachm. Coins of bronze, silver and gold deemed socially acceptable as fair tender, but snubbed by the temple treasury in favour of silver shekels because of their purity, which is ironic because the shekels had the face of Melkart or Hercules, the god of Tyre, on them. Then there were those who sold pigeons. The Levitical law states that pigeons are to be used as offerings by those who can't afford a lamb. So the poor, pigeons, winged rats that are commonplace across the land, being sold to a captive audience. It's a bit like going to the cinema and buying a bag of popcorn for £8. But for convenience, people pay the rate. I think this is why both Mark and Matthew, in his version of events, point out that Jesus kicked out both those who sold and bought in the temple. Buyers are complicit by virtue of the fact that they enable sellers to make a profit. In this scenario, profit out of religious obedience and observance. We know from so much of modern society that the purchaser is forced to suck it up and pay what is required, whether it's in the guise of tax from local or national government or what we're willing to pay, dependent on which shop we frequent. Secondly, by willingly buying our offering at corner shop prices because it's convenient, are we less invested in the true value of the atonement that we are paying our offering for? Paying more for a quick fix rather than putting the legwork in to understand true value. I think this is why Jesus' zeal for his Father's house is expressed in such forceful terms. Jesus already knows what's going to happen to him. He knows the value that his Father places on atonement, and yet those who swear allegiance to the temple do so out of tradition and diligence rather than the heart-rending devotion. Both those who buy and sell are robbing God of glory and honour that he deserves when we do things out of convenience. So on to the positives. Is it not written that my house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations? We're in the Gentile court, the only part of the temple that those deemed foreign are allowed in if they want to worship the God of the Jews. Not only has it been turned into a market, detracting from the worship being offered by those wanting to participate, but it is contained within a balustrade signifying that God is only interested in drawing near to the Jews. Leviticus 19 is as much a part of the law as the other chapters in the book, and God quite clearly tells the Israelites that when a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat him as a native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt, and I am the Lord your God. So we have Gentiles wanting to worship the same God that the Jews worship, wanting to bring offerings to him, and are prevented from doing so, not at the point of the curtain at the Holy of Holies, but at the periphery of the temple. This is not treating a stranger as a native among you. The Israelites were strangers in the land of Egypt. Gentiles were strangers seeking God on the land of Jewish temple worship. Many of those seeking Jesus today are strangers in the land of church that we have unwittingly made too complicated, too inaccessible, and focused on outward obedience and convenience. As we move forward on this day of the Holy Week, let's listen to what the Spirit is saying to us about our role as buyer and seller in our modern day church, and how we are preventing foreigners from feeling welcome in the way that will bring our offering to God through our services. May the way we live our lives declare to the nations, in the words of Paul to the Galatians, that there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, and there is no male or female, for we are one in Christ Jesus.